Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. If you've been in the menosphere for a while, you cannot have failed to have come across my guest today, Amanda Thebe. Amanda is everything you would want in a friend, a colleague, and an expert in all things menopause. And by that, I mean she is approachable, knowledgeable, frank, and real. Her credentials are long and heavyweight, with 30 years in the fitness industry, a qualified nutrition coach, membership of the Canadian and North American Menopause Society, and author of the best-selling book, Menopocalypse, which I highly recommend to one and all. In this episode, we talk about her menopause, of course, the migraines, and the hindsight of perimenopause. We also cover the most common symptoms like weight gain, anxiety, depression, and brain fog, along with her methods for not only getting through, but getting the most out of this life phase and the freedom that it can bring, all naturally in the most relatable way. Before we get to Amanda, I would like to remind you that it can be really difficult working out what is perimenopause, what is life, what is stress, what is work, what is burnout, and what is exhaustion. So sometimes it's really good to talk about it. That is why I am offering up Real Menopause Therapy, a platform where you can handpick your own therapist based on your health concerns, let's say menopause, your work environment, so they understand your unique pressures that you face from day to day. Perhaps they used to work in your industry, and even your interests, creative writing, cave diving, coffee roasting, and weightlifting, just to name a few. So you can find someone that gets you, someone that is matched to you and you find much easier to open up to. For now, subscription and your first half an hour is free, no obligation, no tie-in, just therapy that fits your schedule and fits you. Just go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy with a capital R, capital M, capital T right now. And the moment you've been waiting for, our guest, Amanda. Amanda, it is a complete joy to meet you. And I've read your book and love it, so I would love to talk about that. But first of all, so everybody gets a sense of who you are, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background?
Hey, and it's so great to be here, Hattie. I am British, but living in Canada. I've moved here donkeys ago, like 20 years. I've lived in Toronto with a stint in Texas. That was fun, or not, depending on how you look at it. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach, probably very similar background to yourself. And I'm also the author of Menopocalypse, the book that you've just spoken about. And the reason I wrote the book is because of my literal hellish experience through perimenopause. But really, it was the main reason I wrote it was because I realized there was a complete knowledge gap, that nobody told us about menopause, and it was a complete mystery to us. And I didn't understand that, and I wasn't happy about that. So I sort of fell down a perimenopause rabbit hole and came out the other side with the book. And so it's very much your best mate's guide to menopause. And I wondered how you felt about reading it, because I wanted a book that was not super dry and medical and not flippant and dismissive, which is the two categories I saw. And I was like, I just want to imagine I've gone around to my mate's house for a cup of tea and she's like, this is what you need to know. This is how you can advocate for yourself. And then in the meantime, have you thought about some stuff you can do for yourself, some lifestyle stuff? And that's the book. But it is evidence-based. I was very keen that I didn't cross any lines. I wasn't pretending to be a doctor. And I really wanted women to know that this is like what we know factually and no more. And this is some simple steps that you can start taking.
And that is exactly how it is. And listening to it, yes, we do have similar backgrounds with the nutritional and the personal training. And listening to it, it was everything that's in my head and more, but so eloquently put, but in a very, very accessible manner. So
the only reason it's eloquent is because I didn't do the voiceover. We because some random Canadian did it. I couldn't travel because of the pandemic to record it. And I was like, I don't want some Brit to do it because they'll probably put some "hello, darling" or like some like posh or some posh like royal voice on. And I was like, it had to be a northerner, but then it had to be like from Teesside, and then it had to be not a Geordie. And I had all of these. Anyway, so I ended up getting this really simple, nice, lovely Canadian woman to do it. And so I was happy with it, but I don't know how it sounds. And I don't know how it sounds when she says codswallop or like fuck off or whatever it is I say in the book.
The fuck off is fine. The bloody sounds a little bit more like the adjective as in a bloody plaster rather than a bloody nightmare.
A verb.
She's great. Yeah, exactly. And I had to listen to it because I fall asleep when I read sometimes because it's at the end of the day, but I now want to buy the book as well as having listened to it because I just want to have notes and refer back. And I love the way that you have both practical advice, which is as though you were talking to your mate, and you also refer to things like the fact that we still have mischief in us. That really, really resonated. I was like, yes, we are alive. We still have playfulness and fun within us. So it's incredibly attractive and accessible. Going back a little bit, though, can you share your experience? I know you do in the book, but how perimenopause was for you and how you're feeling now you are properly, genuinely, I'm very jealous, postmenopausal.
How can I do this in like an elevator pitch? Because it goes on a bit, of course, because I have to write a whole book about it. But you know, my story, for all we're going to talk about it, is so very similar to many other women's. And the only reason I put it in the book is so that they could feel like it was relatable. I didn't want it to be, oh, woe is me. But essentially, that's how it felt. Like I went into my 40s after being a personal trainer and doing nutrition for like a couple of decades on and off, like as a hobby, then as a career. Never been taught about menopause, and it's just missing. In fact, we get taught that nothing needs to be taken into consideration with our body as we age. And so I enter my 40s, I'm fit, I'm healthy. I'm like, oh, this aging looks piece of piss. I can do this, you know. Then I think I was about 42. I'd gone to a boxing class and I'd worked extra hard. I really loved going. Felt very unwell afterwards and just struggled to recover, and then spent like days and days feeling unwell only to recover, then feel sick again. And so literally that was the pinpoint start of me knowing something wasn't right. And then I spent 2 years floundering in some type of medical wilderness that everybody wanted to help me, but nobody knew what it was. And then it was like a routine gynecology appointment, because here in Canada, like you get assigned a gynecologist, if you're lucky enough, I should say, and to do like, you know, like a well woman check, like just to check everything over. And he immediately recognized I was bawling my eyes out. I felt less of a person at this stage. He recognized what was going on and sort of said, you know, this is perimenopause and I can help you. And it felt like a relief, because I was like, phew, I don't have a brain tumor or whatever it was they were testing me for. But then I was really angry. Then I was like, this isn't okay. Like, if I don't know about this and I'm like in the industry that's supposed to have a really good understanding of human physiology, well, how on earth are other women going to be feeling? And I bet there's a lot of them. And so then I started just talking about it generally. I created like a Facebook group. It's called Menopausing So Hard. And there's thousands of women in there and they're saying the same thing. Like, they're literally repeating my story on rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I think it's a travesty that there's this massive knowledge gap that like I don't get. I just don't understand. I know there's stigma. I know there's some embarrassment. I know, like, you know, a lot of women still think it's taboo. There's a study here recently, Hattie, that showed that 54%, so more than half the women surveyed, still considered it a taboo. And I'm like, this is crazy. We live in a world where nothing is off limits anymore, nothing. And yet more than half the women surveyed still think it's a taboo topic. So that's why it's good that you and I and lots of other women are sort of stepping forward and saying, yeah, enough of that. We're tired of that.
Yes. And within our realm, and certainly in fitness and wellness, I don't believe there are any taboos. I mean, I'll talk about poop and periods and all kinds of things all day long, very happily, because I find it really interesting.
Me too.
But there are cultures and people who are still challenged by talking about this. And then there's another section, certainly in the UK, that I feel divides us rather than unifies us. And I think we feel the same way about the way that menopause is often pathologized, certainly in the media or on social media. And it's as though something is wrong with us. Lord knows it feels like something is wrong with you some days, but it doesn't mean that something is bad and wrong, and it can be managed. So how do you approach this whole, yes, woe is me, no, woe is me, and yes, there's something wrong, and no, there really isn't, and yes, I understand how you feel, and that whole basket case of conflict?
And I see it more in the UK than anywhere else. I mean, there's shades of it over here in North America, less in Canada, more in the US. But I think there's like one or two leading voices that have hugged the menopause sort of space. And initially, I looked at these people as like being forging the path forward, like to opening the conversation. But you have to remember, I'm not talking to you, I'm just talking out loud. I mean, you do know, but you have to remember that, you know, women come in all different shapes and sizes with different experiences and different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, all of these different things. And it completely impacts our whole menopause experience. And so you've got some women that, well, statistically, it sort of looks like this. 75% of women are going to have 7 or more symptoms. Right? That's one study I'm referring to over here in Canada, but I think it can be extrapolated to the rest of the Western world. So 75% of women will have 7 or more symptoms. The other 25% seem to be fine, don't seem to need any help going through menopause. Of that 75%, about 25% seem to have life-altering symptoms. I believe that was me. I believe I fell into that like extremely. It was detrimental on my mental health and my overall health. That's the statistics as we know. And what we know is for those women that are struggling with symptoms, they should be offered hormone therapy, not HRT, which is really an invalid term for it. The rest of the world calls it menopause hormone therapy, this low level of hormones that really does help a lot of women. It helps restore some type of equilibrium, helps them function again, and it can really be a game changer. I believe every woman who is a candidate for hormone therapy should at least have the conversation with her medical provider. That's the ideal world. But then, you know, we have to then remember that there's other women in this conversation, those that never need it because they feel fine, those that choose not to take it because not everybody should be taking it, those that try it and it doesn't work for them. When I wrote the book 4 years ago, I was trying to go on it and it didn't work. And I tried it for nearly 5 years. And each time it made me feel worse. In fact, so much worse that it impacted my mental health to the state where I had suicidal ideology. It was a very, very dark time for me. I've since learned that I have like a hormone sensitivity, which some women do. Hormones are very, very powerful. And I was okay with that. I just was like, fine, then I'll either use something else or just try and manage my way through it. And then you've got all of the other women that are contraindicated because they can't take it if they have some type of a history of breast cancer or whatever. There's lots of different circumstances. And so this pot of grey, this melting pot of every woman really is where that conversation should happen. Not to the extremes of like HRT will give you breast cancer, it's bad, big pharma, all of those. And then the private doctors who are saying all women should be on HRT because it does this, it does this, it does this, it protects us, it does, and making claims that aren't backed by the medical consensus. I'm like, can't we bring those two extreme conversations and bring it back to the center? And that's firmly where I stand because the medical societies, the menopause societies too, have got prescription guidelines based on all the data as we know it. And that's how we prescribe medication. And it's a strong, powerful medication. And we have to follow these guidelines. Doctors who work outside of those guidelines in the name of progression or evolving science or whatever, need to do that in a controlled way that's safe to women, not in a way that treats women like guinea pigs, that just throw them on doses that aren't supported by the medical community and putting them at risk. And I'm very vocal about that. I'm a skeptic. I'm very much trying to look at this from a balanced point of view. And I find it a tiny bit worrying. So in general, it's a really long answer because this is what I do. In general, the answer about it being pathologized, I would say that one, menopause isn't a disease. It isn't a hormone deficiency. This is something our body was meant to do. And even if you go through this in a medical manner, your body eventually would have gone through menopause. It's sort of meant to happen if we live long enough. Those who go through it in a forced manner or, put it into immediate menopause, of course, they should be treated differently. That's considered to be a medical condition. And so we're meant to go through this as an evolutionary process, and our body is expecting it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean we should suffer. And what we do know statistically as well is in that 3 to 5 year window following perimenopause, most women seem to find that their symptoms calm down. And it was true for me. And I know I'm just one person, but I had the worst perimenopause, and I am now 4 years post-menopause. And I can honestly say I can hardly remember going through it, like pregnancy, like having a horrible birth. It's like that. And that's what, when we look at the numbers, that's what it seems most women experience. And so if talking about this light at the end of the tunnel, instead of it being like a big dark cave, to me should be something we should tell women. This is an opportunity for us to reevaluate things, to look how we're going to live the rest of our lives, which is quite a long time, hopefully, afterwards.
I hesitate to use, and I haven't done on the podcast yet, the term rebirth, because it does sound very intense and very woo and out there. But the way that perimenopause highlights so many aspects of life that you might have gone through that you do need to face and deal with, and the liberation that there are little chinks of it. I'm 50 now. I know I started perimenopause around 41, or sort of with hindsight, that's my belief anyway.
Yeah, hindsight's what drives us in perimenopause. Oh yeah, that back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the idea that, we do have to face up to some of the things that have happened to us. And it's a great opportunity for us personally, I think, to create some really strong boundaries and to forge forward on the path that really matters to you as the one woman in front of us.
And growing into yourself. Even as an example, yesterday in the gym, a woman was saying, I'm waiting for you. She came up to me and said, I'm just doing this exercise next to you because I'm waiting for you to finish. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Well, look, I've got one more to go and then I'll be out of your way. And then I took a moment and thought, you can wait. Not in a rude way, but you can wait. But I was desperate not to take up any space. And it was only afterwards that I reminded myself that I'm a grown up and it's okay. I can politely say, don't worry, I'll be done in a moment without scuttling off. So it's taking a long time to grow up in that respect, but it is happening. And there are all sorts of other things that I've spoken to people about, that you do feel you're becoming the self you actually want to be. The mental aspect of it, with its challenges and its successes, how has that been for you? You've said in your darkest time you had suicidal ideation. How has all the positive transformation been?
Yes, a really great point you made there. So depression for me was the surprise out of the whole of perimenopause, because I had never had any mental health issues ever. And I sort of had a little bit of a shitty experience through life. I haven't had the easiest journey, and maybe I did the whole British thing and packed it in a box and, put it in the cupboard and forgot about it. And maybe that did come back to bite me, because there's a lot of correlation between past traumas and events and our experience through menopause. I still don't believe that was what happened to me, but that's maybe because I don't want to dig too deep. that might be a failing on my part, but depression was something I didn't know I had until somebody told me I had it. And I think that the 2 years I really struggled with my health, it was actually migraines with aura. That was the main symptom I had, where I would lose vision, feeling in my face, vertigo, nausea. It was just so gross, and it never let up for years. And I think just that, and then just in general, the changes and being overwhelmed by everything helped sort of like the depression raise its ugly head, sort of thing. And I did feel like Winnie the Pooh with a dark cloud over my head all the time. And very unlike me is from my nature. I'm very outgoing, and I really like meeting new people and talking to them and learning about them. And I lost all of that. I just remember waking up one morning thinking, I don't think I can keep doing this. I don't think I can keep, if this is how my life's going to be for the rest of my life, I don't want to be that person. It was just horrible. And so I remember going to this gynecologist, and he said, this is what's going on. You've got migraine with aura. I see this every day. You're struggling with depression. I can help you with that. He sort of named things. And it's that thing that when you don't know what's going on, it's harder to grasp or even be positive about, or even forge a better path forward. But when you can label something, you name it, it puts you somewhat in control. And then I was like, well, I don't want to have depression. And that's a very flippant thing to say, because if you've got depression, you've got depression. What can I do outside of like the help he's given me? And so that's when I just really started to dig deep into the lifestyle stuff, because we really know it can be a helpful aid to anything else that you're doing. And for the most part, that was the troublesome thing for me. Into postmenopause now, I mean, my brain is definitely changed. It's different. And we know that the brain structure changes through perimenopause to postmenopause. It rebounds, it bounces back. And my migraines have almost all gone. My depression is almost all gone. I've had in the last 5 years 2 depressive episodes. I saw them coming. I felt them. I hated them. I sort of had a bit of trauma about them, like I can't go back there type thing. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, like I took pharmaceuticals when I needed them, but I just was like, I know I need to get out and walk. I know I need to exercise. I know I don't want to like head down the path of eating shitty food. I need to support my body right now. I need to have a really balanced view of food. I need to be social. So I pushed myself out of my comfort zone when I was in those positions, and it really did help. It helped as well as with the antidepressants when I took them for the time. But those incidences are not nearly like they were, and I feel as though I'm in a place now where I understand that maybe now I might be susceptible to migraines under stress and depression under extreme circumstances. And so I need to try and create a path forward that stops those things happening as much as is humanly possible. And so some of the changes been hard. Some of the changes been actually revolutionary for me, as in given me this calmness and given me this strength to just go, well, like you in the gym, I should have made that woman weigh. I definitely feel different about how I interact with people. I don't feel the need to serve people like I used to as a constant people pleaser. I definitely feel like more my adventures come back, and I really want to lean into that. I want to lean into the things that I really enjoy, like traveling and finding the time to do creative things. I'm very crafty and stuff. And all of those things that I used to just try and fit in, I've just made them priority. And I have the privilege to be able to do that, in fairness. I work for myself. But when I speak to women who are going through menopause, I see them do this reevaluation at the other side. It's like, okay, I just did a hard thing. For some women, extremely hard. And now what? Now what can I do to sort of like run with this and thrive with this?
Yes, we have this next part of life. It's not all over by any stretch. So how are we going to make the most of it? And creating boundaries, saying no to things you don't want to do, and actually even some things that you do but know will stretch you too far, knowing your time limits, your energy limits, and not looking upon that as a negative. I know I certainly can't run in the same way on all cylinders like I used to. Or if I do, the repercussions
too hard.
So it's much better to just take it step by step. And that's another thing that I really enjoyed about your book, is that you encourage your clients or readers or listeners to go step by step. Because if you say you're going to work out 10 times a week and eat only vegetables and protein and do all the things straight off, you're going to fail. I mean, I don't know if I'd last a day doing all of that all in one go, but taking it step by step and the small bite-sized examples and then building on that, the atomic habits.
Oh, James Clear, of course, yeah. I think we all have.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant book. So can you give some examples to anyone who's listening now of how they might begin to build their atomic habits of looking after themselves?
Yeah, and as coaches, we personally know the benefits of leaning into behavioral change. We know that. But for the general population who are just thinking, oh, I'd really love to sort of like start getting healthy. That's usually the thing. What can I do? Oh, I know I need to exercise and eat better. And so they'll do extremes because they see that out there. They see influencers or whatever doing these crazy things. And the voice of reason, which is usually like people like me and you going, you don't need to do that. Actually, you can just take this a little bit slowly, because ideally anything you do now, I want you still to be doing in 30, 40 years time. You're not doing a 3 or 4 week plan. You're changing your lifestyle. We're looking at ways that you can enhance what you're doing that proactively improves your health, improves your quality of life, and hopefully aids with longevity. Right? That's really boring to talk about, but it works, right? Mm-hmm. And so talking back to what you just previously spoke about, it's like, how do we reevaluate ourselves moving forward? A lot of women get stuck because of how they've changed and how they look. Mm-hmm. It stops women progressing. They lose confidence in themselves because maybe they've got extra wrinkles, a bit of fat on the face, some grey hairs. This isn't just menopause. This is just aging, right? But it seems to sort of like culminate at this time. They maybe are not functioning as well because they've got brain fog in their careers, and you know, they lose belief in their athletic ability. I talk about this in the book. This is a phenomenon that we see, and it stops women doing adventurous things, for looking for the thrill and for pushing themselves past their comfort zone. And that actually translates into a loss of lean body mass, a loss of women thriving and excelling in their health. And so I get that women feel stuck and they don't know where to start. So they see something and think, I'll just do this extreme 1,200 calorie diet. I'll only eat vegetables and a bit of protein, and and they're exhausted and they don't stick to it. And of course they don't stick to it. I couldn't stick to that. Like you said, like, it's just stupid. And so I'm like, okay, what's one thing you can do that you know you're going to be successful at? And this is a James Clear type mentality, is that if you're going to change something, make it something you can do. Mm-hmm. If you hate running, don't make running the exercise you do. If you like dancing, go and start a dance class. If you like swimming, go and do an aquafit or do a swimming class. I don't care. Just do something that you think that would fill your cup, essentially. And so I'm like, just first of all, start doing lifestyle things that actually are accessible to you, because once you start on the path of changing those habits, of showing up and being consistent, chances are you're going to stick at it. And then chances are you're going to seek out something else, because when you do something consistently that you like, curiosity takes over. And when you're curious, you'll go, oh, well, actually, I can go dancing 3 times a week and I feel quite good about it. I wonder what it would be like to go to the gym and get stronger. You know, and that's usually how motivation and improvements occur. And when it comes to diet, again, why we go to the extremes instead of saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and maybe reduce my snacking. Maybe I'm eating crisps every night, watching Coronation Street and a glass of wine. That's probably the first place I would start. How could you replace those without feeling like you have this big like chasm, this big gulf there? Or maybe you could add something. Maybe you could say, I'm going to look for vegetables at 2 meals a day, like an abundance of vegetables, and just see how it makes me feel over a 2-week period. It's just simple things like that.
And even approaching each meal for flavor, because again, on the extreme side, I feel a lot of people go to boiled chicken and broccoli, and I mean, that's unappealing whether you eat meat or not. It's just not an enjoyable meal. Whereas if you cook your chicken or your fish or your tofu with herbs and spices, yes, it does take a little bit more effort, but the reward is absolutely there. So finding combinations that actually taste good, that make you want to eat them.
And in addition to that, I think that we've been conditioned as women that we have to stay young and we have to stay thin and that we have to have fear around food. It's become moralistic that some food is good, some food is bad, this is clean, this is dirty. It's just nonsense. And so like trying to say to women in this time, let's try and relax some of those fears around food. It's like the undieting, the food freedom type model. And then like knowing that food has a place in our culture, in our celebrations. Like I've just come back from Spain and I'm just going to France. It's just coincidental. I'm traveling a lot at the moment. But when I go there, I want to eat the food. I want to like feel like I'm immersed in that culture. And imagine going to a coffee shop and saying, oh, well, I'm not going to have a croissant because it's got 25 grams of sugar. Like, gosh, like what a way to live. Yeah. There's a way to find balance even when you want to try all the foods. There's a way to do that. And I think that giving women that freedom to do that is really important.
Why do you think it is our generation that is so vocal and so passionate about rebranding, aging and menopause and everything that we are able to do from 40 onwards when we were previously perhaps sidelined?
I know I did have a conversation with like 3 generations, female generations in my family when I was back in the UK. And I think like my mum's generation didn't have access to information. They didn't have access to social circles. And it very much was a stigmatizing topic. She went through it alone and didn't have anyone to speak to, anyone. And I think probably me at the time was like, you got to take supplements, you're not taking drugs, just listening to the headlines saying how dangerous it was. Thankfully, that's been addressed now. My niece, who's like the Gen Zer, Gen Z, I suppose, depending on where you're listening from, she's like, well, you better get that sorted, Auntie Amanda, because we will. And I sort of like believe her, right? And I think that what's happened is we have access to social media, we have access to information, we've got podcasts, we've got books, we've got, we have access and we have platforms. And I think there's been this massive shift where we're just like, we're sick of this. We're sick of being sidelined. We're sick of being spoken at. We're sick of being told what we should look like and not what and all of these rules. And we're just fighting back saying this is ridiculous, but it's actually easy for us to get our voices out there now. And I think that it's just an accumulation of a lot of things. And definitely fighting back at those misogynistic tropes that just like have driven other generations. It's like, but I'm telling you, the next generation will not stand for it at all. So we're sort of paving the way for our daughters, nieces, etc., right?
Yeah, some of the conversations I've had with both of mine, they're 17 and 11, very, very interesting sort of pivotal times and fascinating conversations. I learned so much from them.
I feel like they're so much more advanced in the conversation about how we should represent ourselves more than we are. And I have 2 boys and they're very like, not proud, but they think it's great that I'm doing stuff like this because they realize the importance of having these conversations. They realize that many women are denied access to care because they don't know what's going on and they don't know, where to turn. And we can be the ones that can sort of facilitate those conversations. And while we might be talking about menopause, this could be about any topic, right? It could be about any topic. And it's just, I think that they understand the importance of having these inclusive and diverse conversations. And I think my boys feed me, like they keep me going type thing.
Having the boys understand is critical to how this all moves forward. So if they understand and appreciate the women, girls in their lives in a different way, I will say more than historically has happened, then they're going to be wonderful men to have around.
Yep, support, empathy, allyship, all of those things is what they can give us for sure, and vice versa for them.
Yes, exactly. They get back and we get back, so everybody wins.
Yeah.
What does the next phase that you're fully embracing for you look like? And how does good midlife and onwards health look for you?
Well, one of the things I hear a lot in the UK that I really fight back about is this idea that, we're all going to die of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis and dementia and you name it, diabetes, because our risk does increase after menopause. Postmenopausal women are at a higher risk than they were pre-menopause. That doesn't mean it's inevitable. There's so many things that go into the idea that we're going to get these diseases. It can be a genetic component. It can be our lifestyle. It can be environmental. So many different things count towards all of the diseases and cancers and stuff that happen to us. But what we do know from studies is that the lifestyle choices we make can reduce those risks significantly, even mitigate some of the risks. And so I think that what's happened to me and people sort of in my type of like mindset is that where we would exercise in our 20s and 30s for maybe strength or to look good or, athletic performance, I think there's a shift that happens that makes us look at the things we do for like, how can I be healthier longer and with quality? Because we all want to live longer, but I don't want it to feel shitty. Like I actually want to be able to still do like all of the activities I do for as long as humanly possible. And so I think that's a bit of a mind shift that happens. And so it takes a lot of pressure off you, I think. Like for me personally, I don't feel the pressure. If I miss a workout, I don't go, oh my God, like I've missed this workout. But every single day I'm like, I have to move. I want to know that I've got lots of movement in. I sort of want to keep an eye on the food I eat because I know that certain things are going to support me better now. I definitely need to look at my protein intake. I definitely need to be eating loads of fruit and veg. I need that fiber. Like we just need certain things as we get older. Reducing the alcohol intake, reducing the junk food, essentially, like just like having a bit of a shift to being more mindful about the food we're eating. Socializing, really making sure that we get out there and we have good communities, because that's the type of thing that helps us like forge forward, like with strength for sure. And so for me, there's been this shift, and I'm seeing this in other women, and they're really inspiring to me. When I see women in their 70s and 80s still like going out there and kicking ass, I'm just like, that's me. That's my goal. Just that right there. And I want to be able to live a long, independent life. I don't want anyone to have to I don't want to have to rely on people. And I think that they're pretty decent goals to have.
Oh, I agree. Even simple things like, but I want to travel so much. So I want to be able to lift my suitcase and put it in the overhead locker myself. I want to be an amazing grandmother when the time is right and play with my grandkids and move around and throw them around and all that kind of thing. So I think that does suddenly begin to come into play. And the foods are, how is it going to make me feel? Yes, a fabulous piece of chocolate cake. Do you know what? I'm going to get stuck in and really enjoy it. But I don't want to eat it every day because probably it's not going to make me feel awesome if that's all I eat. So finding that balance. And yeah, it's not very much fun talking about it. And it doesn't sound sexy or wild or mischievous like the 20s used to be. But that's okay because you can still have more fun if you're actually putting in the work, I think.
And you know what? Like adding to that, like doing this consistent showing up, like having an awareness about what's happening as far as like your movement, like your exercise and your food and your surroundings, etc., actually doesn't take a lot of thought once you start practicing it. And unfortunately for those women that are stuck in this diet cycle, all they think about is food. Like imagine waking up every morning going, oh my God, what am I going to eat? And oh, I've eaten this and now I feel guilty. And it's like this hamster wheel that they can't get off. And the freedom that you get from moving away from that and actually just being present, being in the moment and enjoying life. And you can do that without indulgence. And I think that that's what people don't understand. I think they think if they're not hyper focused on food and exercise obsessively, then it means they're going to go to pot. And it doesn't need to be that way. There's this really happy medium in between where you can sort of have a bit of everything. You can be mindful about your food and you can still live life. And that's what I would love for everyone because it's so freeing.
One of the words that keeps coming back to me at the moment is freedom. that begins to really appear at this point in life. What does adventure and mischief look like to you? Because that word, that just stuck out in your book for me.
I definitely lean into that, and I keep saying that word because I lost it. I lost it through my perimenopausal years, and it was like losing a part of me. My family, I married somebody who's a very, very sensible person. He's very black and white about things, and it's me in the family that's like, we're going for a hike this weekend, we're going to go and do this, and we're going to go and do that. And if I didn't organize that, then we don't have a very adventurous life. And I did lose that, and everyone was impacted by it. And so now that I feel like I've found myself again, I'm always looking at ways that we can do fun things as a family, fun things just with my partner. So I travel a lot. All of my money goes into traveling. If you follow me on Instagram, you're like, oh my God, she's away again. Yeah, well, yeah, because I really enjoy like learning about other people's culture. I love history. I just like fall into that environment and just get a lot from it. But I also like to try things that make me a little bit scared. Like I'll do things like a via ferrata or treetop climbing horseback ride. Things that just make me, some people go, I can't do that. I'm like, well, let's just try. And so I want to always have that feeling. Like I learned to swim when I was 50. Here's a good example. I learned to swim when I was 50. I got COVID, and it was long COVID, and it was brutal. And I was living in Texas, and I thought, I'm going to go swimming every day, and I hope it'll make me feel better. And as I was swimming every day, I realized that I was getting a bit better, doing my breaststroke and doing like one length and then being out of breath. And I thought, I'm athletic. I've always been athletic all my life. Why can't I swim without being exhausted? So I taught myself to swim, and it took me about 10 weeks. And my husband, who is a significantly good swimmer, like he's just swam Alcatraz. We went, wow. Like he's crazy swimmer. He's been trying to teach me for years, and we went swimming together, and I swam a mile, and he went, when did this happen? I didn't tell him. And it was sort of one of my proudest moments. So I was really excited about the fact that I could swim like I used to see people doing up and down. And so he challenged me, which was unusual, and said, why don't, when we go back to Canada, you start swimming in Lake Ontario? Well, Lake Ontario is one of the Great Lakes, as you know. It's cold and it's scary. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I was like, this is the type of thing I want to do. I want to put myself in situations where it's safe, but it's a little bit challenging. And now I am a regular swimmer in Lake Ontario. I love it. And it's things like that that make us grow. And as far as mischief's concerned, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just a cheeky person, and I like to like play jokes and have a good laugh with people. Like it really matters. I love belly laughing. In perimenopause, I didn't laugh. I felt like I'd lost the ability to belly laugh. And now, like, I just want to laugh till I cry, till my belly aches again, like you did when you were a kid. And so we should like seek out stuff like that.
I haven't done that in a long time, and my best friend and I talk about it. We used to roll on the floor crying with laughter, but I'm convinced that it will come back. It's just sort of, there are blips, and certainly things do get better as you go through perimenopause, I believe, anyway, and I'm sticking with that.
Stick with that.
When your book came out in 2020, that was a bold move because that was quite early. Presumably it's going from strength to strength now. So what are your plans sort of for the future? And then finally, where can people find you?
So I wrote the book when I moved to Texas because I'd given up my personal in-person training business. So I wrote the book. Nobody wanted to buy it. It was maybe too soon. People were like Penguin House and Simon & Schuster were like, who's going to want to read a book about menopause? And I sort of shelved it. I thought, I'm not going to self-publish. I want somebody to publish it for me. And then an independent publisher picked it up in Canada and they loved it. And so I released it, but it was right in the pandemic. Who would have known? So so that was unfortunate, but it meant that I could publicize and do my book tours all online, which is why I've done so many podcasts, because it just was the easiest forum. And it's turned out to be one of those evergreen books. like it's not going anywhere. And then the publisher are really happy about that because it continually has legs. I definitely think I'd like to update it because we've learned some things since then, more about like our brain function and how that changes. And maybe I'd like to talk more about the evolution into post-menopause. So moving forward, I have been asked to write another book. I'm mulling it over, and I have an idea of what I would like it to be about. And I think it's more about how women do evolve in postmenopause and what's next, almost like what's post-menopocalypse, that type of thing. But I'm also doing a TEDx talk, not a TED talk, a TEDx talk. That's in a couple of weeks. And I'm talking about, should men talk about menopause? And so I think it's vitally important that they do, because I know that my menopause experience really impacted my husband. I didn't know for 2 years, and neither did he. And it was a very worrisome time. And so I want everyone to talk about menopause. And so I'm doing a TEDx talk on that, which I'm nervous and excited about. And then I'm also the co-founder of a company in Canada called Naya Health. And one of the issues we have in Canada, like you have in the UK, is access to care for women. And so this is going to be a full suite end-to-end solution. So women can get access only in Canada, unfortunately, for the moment, to a healthcare assessment. So we will be able to do that with a nurse practitioner or a pharmacist or a registered nurse. Our doctors, that we don't have enough. So this will ease that bottleneck. But it also gives them access to digital wellness, which is the tools they need, like the strength training, like the mindfulness, the mobility work, the nutrition, and the community. So everything's going to be in this one spot. And that will be available globally, of course. Anyone can do that side of it. So we're pretty excited about it. We'll be making an announcement on World Menopause Day, October 18th. People can find me at amandathebe.com. Everything's there. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm currently spending the next 6 weeks doing corporate talks. It is World Menopause Month. So I'm doing about 16 of those, which is great because it means that people are ready to listen. People care. And I like that.
So do I, very much. And Amanda, thank you very, very much for your time, particularly if you've got all that going on. I appreciate it even more. Bearing in mind Amanda's sudden mental health challenges, I would like to point out that Real Menopause Therapy subscription is currently free, and your first half an hour's conversation with a qualified therapist is also free. Just go to bit.ly/RM therapy with a capital R, capital M, capital T. I will put the details in the show notes. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.